Welcome, Jody Gehrman. It's a great pleasure to see you, and I have lots and lots to ask you today. I think that as you have seen from my little email, there are two topics that I'm especially interested in speaking to you about. One is genre jumping, which happens to be top of mind for me at the moment. So selfishly, I want to ask you about that. But the other thing is about how you stay so prolific. I mean, you've been prolific throughout your career, but that doesn't seem to be waning at all in these kind of very stressful times. And before we got started here, we were all discussing exactly how stressful this period is. So, but before we get to that, let's start from the beginning, because you and I have been friends for a while, but not everybody else might know that much about you. So do you want to give us a quick recap of your career? I know that I've told everyone that it spans novels and screenplay, at least one screenplay, I believe, correct? And then a lot of award-winning plays, but maybe start at the beginning and tell us how you got into it.
Sure, yeah. So playwriting is really kind of my beginning. I consider it my spiritual writing home, sort of. I had written as a kid, and I kept copious journals like most people in my youth, really bad poetry mostly, and lots of thoughts about, what was wrong with my life as a teenager, etc. But I really got serious about writing in college when I discovered playwriting, which was kind of an accident. I had been acting for a while and was a theater major, but I just kind of stumbled into the wrong class that turned out to be the right class. It was a playwriting class, and I just fell in love because I realized that all writing doesn't have to be done in isolation, that there is this deeply collaborative tradition in theater, and that immediately spoke to me. So I wrote a lot of plays in college. I was at UC Santa Cruz, and I was lucky enough to have mentors there and a way to, get my work out there. So that became very addictive for me, just seeing my work on stage and working with actors and directors. So I did that for a while, and then I did some freelance journalism in the Bay Area when I graduated, mostly working for arts magazines and interviewing writers and poets, that sort of thing. And my first book deal was, I think it was like 2003, right around there, that I signed a 3-book deal for contemporary women's fiction. And so I was in that genre for a while, and then published a number of young adult novels after that. I just kind of needed a change, and that genre was really flourishing at the time. I was really excited by what writers were doing in young adult. And then most recently, I have fiction-wise hopped over to suspense, especially psychological suspense is really what interests me. So my last 2 novels, which I happen to have here, this one was Watch Me was my first suspense novel, and then just a couple weeks ago, The Girls' Weekend was my second suspense novel. So those, how did those get here? No, so I'm really enjoying suspense. It feels like a new vista for me, and again, it's kind of like young adult in the sense that I think that suspense right now is flourishing, and a lot of it has to do with what women writers are doing in the genre. I think Gone Girl really kind of opened some doors that it doesn't all have to be, high speed chases and extremely high stakes thrillers. That oftentimes the little moments of tension in relationships is full of suspense, and so that really interests me, and that's what I've been exploring lately.
I love that. I'm actually writing that down. Little moments of tension in relationships. I might put that up on my wall. So, all right, that is quite a career, and I have all these questions. The first was that you said that you really enjoyed being a playwright because it was so collaborative. And then you said that your first book came out in 2003, but you didn't actually explain why, happy being a playwright, which you obviously are, you have continued to be. Why did you then decide to go to the dark side of lonely writing in a corner by yourself, which is what a lot of novel writing is, right?
It
So,
is, yeah. Well, some people identify as introvert and some people identify as extrovert. I consider myself an ambivert. I'm kind of fed by both. I need times of working in isolation and just, the you don't have ultimate control in the theater, right? Anytime you're collaborating with other people, you are opening yourself up to their creative process and their vision. And so that's been really good for me. But I also enjoy, and I feel like when I'm working back and forth between playwriting and fiction, it kind of feeds each other, sort of a cross-pollination thing that happens. So while I love collaborating and I've co-written some screenplays and I've done a lot of collaborative work, I've actually been co-writing a novel with my stepdaughter for like 5 years. So there's a lot that I get out of those collaborative processes, but I also kind of need the novel and fiction for just sinking into the world by myself. Of course, later on with editors and agents, there's a whole process of getting notes and making those changes, but nobody ever just steps in and changes something for you, right? You still ultimately sort of own that book, and so that I think it's just having the best of both worlds, having the collaborative process to come home to. Mm-hmm. And I still have written plays all of that time, and I sometimes I just feel that change. It's like a change in the weather when I need the collaboration, and then other times when I need to isolate. So I feel lucky to have both. Sorry, what?
I was gonna say, does the weather change like on a daily basis? Like, do you keep projects going in tandem? But today I want to work on my novel, and tomorrow I want to work on my play, or do you write a novel and then do playwriting and then tackle a new novel? How does that work?
Yeah, I would say seasons is probably an apt metaphor because it usually is in like 3-month or 4-month chunks where I'm mostly working on one or the other. I mean, occasionally something might demand my attention. I've got a play that is being rehearsed and changes need to be made, and I'm mostly working on a novel. So a little bit of juggling, but it's not a day-to-day. Today I'll work on this, tomorrow I'll work on something entirely different. I like to dive into a project for a good chunk of time, at least a few months.
Please don't tell me you can get a whole draft of a novel in 3 months.
A whole really bad draft. How's that?
Oh no, you're one of those. I was gonna leave my question about how are you so prolific to the end, but if you're drafting in 3 months, okay, I can do the math. That's hilarious. But, when you said I like, season by season, I thought she can get a whole draft done in 3 months. I have to ask you about that now then. How do you get a whole draft done in 3 months? Like, and how does the writing process between playwriting, we've talked about collaboration versus the solitude, but how is it fundamentally different? Is it fundamentally the same? The actual writing.
Well, I have found being involved in playwriting communities and screenwriting communities. I don't consider myself a professional screenwriter. I haven't really had any, distinct success in that arena. It's incredibly frustrating actually trying to break in, but I love the screenwriting community, and I love all of the tools that they have given me as a novelist that have to do with structure. So, most of my education, a playwriting professor might get up there and say, well, it needs to have a beginning, middle, and end. It needs to have rising action. It needs to have a climax and a denouement. Like that was kind of it for structure. Whereas screenwriters really dig in and divide. There's so many different kinds of templates for structuring your story, and they're so detailed about why these story beats work. So I got really fascinated with that and started applying some of those lessons to my work as a novelist, and found that it eliminated a lot of dead ends, which I found, early in my career, sometimes I would write an entire novel that basically had to be thrown out because it was fundamentally flawed in its structure. So I found that screenwriting and talking to screenwriters, studying with screenwriters, collaborating with screenwriters really helped me understand the bones of the story and apply that to my work as a novelist. I can't remember. I'm not sure if I answered your question or if I got off track.
No, you did answer my question. About the bones of the story, though. So you were saying that there are many different beat sheets out there, right?
Right.
I haven't read very many of them, I'll be honest, but surely they can't all be in agreement. Can they?
I think they appeal to different kinds of storytellers. The one that I am absolutely evangelical about, and that I've gotten a lot of resistance from students and fellow writers from, but I find it really powerful, is Blake Snyder wrote a book called Save the Cat that was originally intended just for screenwriters.
Mm-hmm.
But recently, Jessica Brody came out with a book called Save the Cat for novelists. Mm-hmm. So it has, I'm certainly not the only person that has, clicked into this idea of story beats and using them for fiction. But he has 15 distinct story beats, things like Dark Night of the Soul, or All Is Lost, or, The Catalyst, and pretty detailed concepts of what those beats should do, mm-hmm. and what those turning points should do. And I think it's important not to be too slavish about it. I mean, a lot of people say, well, what's the fun in that? It's paint by numbers, it's so formulaic. Mm-hmm. But I have found that within structure and within those tools that help us develop structure, there is so much freedom, right? Because I'm still constantly being surprised by what my characters do and turns that the story takes. And I have to always go back and revise my outline in order to better serve the story. So I think in my case, I need to be spontaneous and willing to, go off on tangents and see where it leads me. But those 15 story beats are the bones for me. When I have a concept, I start to work it through those beats and see sort of the shape of the story. Mm-hmm. And that helps me see the big picture, so that I can get a sense of whether this really will work as a novel. Sometimes I do the story beats and I decide, this isn't a novel, it's a screenplay, or it's a play for the stage, or it's a short story. It doesn't really have the meat to create a novel.